Viktum.
Man, chilling, bro. Just
All
chilling.
right.
Just got done eating some dinner with the wife and just
Yeah,
hanging
yeah.
out.
All right. Well, welcome to season 4, episode 1 of Strictly for My Diggers, man.
Appreciate you having me, man.
Absolutely. Yo, I've been watching you for a while or whatever. And where are you based at?
I'm currently in Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. Okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool. So we're gonna get right into it. Like when you
Okay.
first started making beats, what was your first piece of equipment? What was your weapon?
Two things really. So I had an SK1, Casio SK1.
Indeed.
It's kind of like a damn toy, basically, like, and
Yeah.
it had like 2 seconds maybe of sampling time, and I thought that was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But my first professional piece of equipment, like my first real machine that I learned on, was an SP 1200.
SP 1200, yes.
Yeah.
Still a classic to this day because it was the SP 12 before that, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what are you using right now currently?
Man, I have a problem.
I see that. I
I
know. I
collect
see that.
gear. I
I see
collect
that.
gear, and my philosophy is that I want to learn as much as I can. Like the
Mhm.
people that I grew up listening to and idolizing
Mhm.
use certain equipment, and I want to know what
Mhm.
their processes were, and I want to know what their limitations were, and that really kind of gives you an eye into the genius of a lot of producers.
Right.
So I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to collect a lot of things over the years. But hands down, my go-to, like just on pure ability to just run and gun, is
Mhm.
the MPC XSE.
Okay. Cool.
It's just, I mean, you can get in there and just get to work.
Right. So with that SP 1200, were you inspired to get that because of the Pete Rocks, or that's just what was out at the time?
um, I mean, I'm older, so like
Right.
SP was like really the only thing people talked about. Like
Mhm.
people forget, like the MPC was like it was popular, but it wasn't on the same level. Like
Right.
when Pete made those records and people realized what you could do with that machine, even though it was limited,
Mhm.
the 10.5 seconds of sampling or 10.2, whatever it is. Um, that was the machine. But it wasn't until way later that everyone else that started moving to the MPC, right? So the SP was just all anybody was talking about. So that's what I got.
Okay, definitely. So you collect all this gear. Do you think to be a successful producer today that you have to constantly upgrade your equipment? Or can
No,
you stay like I started with the MPC 2000 XL at one time? Could I stay on that machine today and still be a relevant producer?
100%. Yeah, it's not
Mhm.
like I hate I hate the idea that like these corporate entities
Mhm.
drive what we think we need, right?
Right.
And I mean, a 2000 XL is still an incredible machine to this day.
Yes, it is.
Like if you use some newer technology, like the hack for a lot of these older machines, like a 3000 or a 2000 XL,
Mhm.
you can do time stretching like on Koala Sampler on your iPad.
Yes.
Sample that into your 2000 or 2000 XL, 3000, whatever it is, and
Mhm.
then chop.
Gotcha.
Saves you like a ton of time, right?
Mhm.
But you're still using the vintage gear. Like I don't
Right.
think you need it's it's your ear and it's who you are that makes the stuff, not the gear.
Not the gear. Exactly. So how do
Yeah.
you feel about the MPC 3000? Because I know that's a classic piece as well. A lot of people love that 3000.
I've got one.
You
I
got
love it.
one. Now, do
Yeah,
you still
it's
use it?
occasionally.
Mhm.
It is
So,
a giant pain in the ass to chop samples on, and I'm going to catch hell for saying that, but
mm,
that's just the truth. Like
mhm,
you got to do it by the numbers. It's like the old like the SP 1200. You had sliders you could
right.
you can chop with. The 3000 doesn't even have that. You got to like scroll.
Right.
and do numbers.
So how do you know what to go to when you're trying to make a beat?
For me, it's just like what I'm feeling.
Hmm.
You know, when I'm in the midst of like doing an actual record, like I'm working on a record for somebody specifically.
Okay.
Um, I'm usually just using one of the newer machines because I can knock things out real fast
So the
and get
workflow.
things moving.
Okay, so you say the older machines, and that's why I go back to that same question. Can you be a relevant producer using that older equipment, knowing that the game moves quickly? You got to get out beats a lot more faster
Yeah,
now.
you absolutely can. It's just you're gonna have to have a lot of patience.
Right. Okay.
You have to have a lot of patience.
Yeah, a whole lot of patience. Yeah, because I know
Yeah,
the game moves faster. And I know with technology, like with the MPC, it was hard. You had to track beats out. It was kind of like really difficult with the Excel, the track out the beats and
yep,
things like that. So when I upgraded to the MPC Studio, the silver one, it was nothing. That one thing I have to bang on pads. I just can't
yeah.
click, which leads to the next question, like software. How do you feel about using software to make beats? Is that a problem or
No, not at all. I mean, like once again, it's the person, not what it is that you're using. Um, I think about the transition from people thinking about, I look at like Ninth Wonder
right?
and his the way people were talking about
Mhm.
like software, like, oh, you made that on a computer, that's cheating. Like, uh, for me, an NPC is a computer too. Like, there's
Indeed.
there's no difference, to be
Right.
perfectly honest with you. And it was what he had access to. So who gives a shit what he was using?
Right. It's
It
the
was
outcome.
it was dope. Who
Yeah.
cares?
Yeah. It's the outcome. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who
I
cares?
definitely agree. I definitely agree as well. So let's get into more deeper beat science. So like when it comes to sampling now, are you still sampling off vinyl or are you using sample packs? Whichever. And forgive me because I'm old school. I'm used to sampling on
Yeah.
vinyl and now I'm digging on YouTube. But what is this when they say sample packs, what is that? Is that just the bunch of samples that you just loop and put together? What is that?
So for me, like, I create sample packs too for people.
Okay.
So now there's two worlds of this. There
Hmm.
are people that curate and dig for records and do digital collections, and you can purchase those off of people and then use them at your own discretion because there's like they're not cleared like anything like
Hmm.
you would sample on vinyl. That's one kind of sample pack. And
Hmm.
then another sample pack would be somebody that's like selling like kicks, drums, snares, hi-hats, and maybe compositions as well, maybe
Right.
original compositioning. I do a lot of that. I do
Hmm.
a lot of replays for people too, like if they're sampling something and they don't want to have to clear the sample.
Right.
Me and a couple of my buddies will go in and replay things, switch it up enough so they don't have to do that type of stuff. But that's another kind of sample pack too.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I wasn't too sure. I'm like sample packs. I'm like, I'm just used to digging in the crates.
Yep,
You
same. I
know.
mean,
Yeah, I see. I see.
yeah,
So are you?
yeah.
So when you're making beats for somebody, are you strictly the crates, or are you using sample packs as well?
This this really depends on what the situation is.
Hmm.
So if like the elephant in the room is, are you clearing samples for a lot of these things? No.
Right.
Like, you got to be making a lot of noise in order to like get that kind of attention. And if you do get that kind of attention, good for you, because
Hmm.
it's gonna happen. That's good, you know.
Right.
But if I'm working on something, like I've recently um, worked on something that was going to be in a movie,
Hmm.
and with that type of scenario, you got to use something that's not going to cause legal issues.
Right.
So in
Hmm.
those scenarios, I'll do something myself, or I'll reach out to one of my friends that does things like that
Right.
and talk
So
about like what I need.
right. So you'll get it replayed, but will you, when they replay it, will you sample it and make it, dirtier?
Oh yeah,
Okay. So it's just
yeah.
not nothing just
You
played
got to
and
treat it just like it's a record.
right. Okay.
Otherwise for me it doesn't feel as like dirty and gritty. Like,
Right.
I have to chop.
Mhm.
I have to do everything that I would normally do with a record.
Right.
I do with other kinds of sampling.
Gotcha. So in North Texas, where you at now? What's the vibe like as far as record stores? There's a lot of good spots to dig at, or you
Yeah, I
digging?
mean, there's a couple of heavy hitters that live out here.
Mhm.
One of which is a really good friend of mine.
Right.
Ginsu Dean, shout out to Ginsu Dean.
Constantine, yes.
One of my best friends. Um, so things do pop up in
Mhm.
stores, and it's usually because he's either offing something or somebody came into town.
Okay.
It's a big music city, so records do show up from time to time. But I'm at the point now where um, most of the record stores here, and they're like hipster related, like lots of like indie pop type record stores, that type of thing, that I'm not going to walk in and find a whole section of like early 80 rock records and library records and things like that I'm going to be looking for.
Right.
So, I'm heavy on Discogs. I'm
Mhm.
constantly looking for, records that I don't have,
Right.
and buying off the internet and having them shipped.
Right.
Buy
Right.
lots of records from Japan.
Mhm. So,
Um,
what's the most you'll spend on the record? I like the dollar crates, but what's the
oh,
most?
absolutely. Some of the best shit you're gonna find is in dollar records.
Right.
Um, the most I'll spend, like, it really depends on how dope the
Mhm.
sound is that I'm looking for.
Right.
I mean, I'm not gonna spend
Mhm.
$200-300 for one record.
Right.
I just won't do that. There are people that will, and that's good for them. But for me, I won't do that.
Yeah. Nah, not at all. So when you go into the record store and you're digging, do you have a certain genre you go into, or is it a certain cover, the way the cover looks? How do you know, hey, I need to buy this record? Do you bring a turntable with you? How does that work?
I do a little bit of everything, right? So I
Mhm.
bring a portable with me,
Right.
and usually the first place I'm going is going to be the rock section.
Okay.
I'm going to look in the rock records.
Mhm.
Um, I'm going to look to see if possibly they have a library section, like some
Right.
Brutons or uh, any of the libraries from the early 80s and late 70s.
Mhm.
I'll look for that type of thing. Those are rare to come across, especially out here.
Right.
Um, and then I'll dive into like the jazz fusion,
Hmm.
um, specifically looking in the Japanese era, or the world.
Right.
Um, Japanese jazz fusion from the early 80s is ridiculous.
Mm.
And so I'll dig in there, and then I'll just go straight to jazz, just regular jazz. Last would probably be like soul.
Right. Because that's, yeah.
It's been worn out quite a
Yeah,
bit.
absolutely.
Not that you can't find heat still,
Hmm.
but you gotta go where the path's less traveled.
Right, right, definitely. So when sampling, like, are you one of those that always have to chop everything? Or are you against looping, just finding an ill groove and just looping it, or you have to chop every sample you find?
Honestly, like, if it's dope, it's dope. Like,
Hmm.
the argument that you have to chop it to make it original makes no sense, because you're borrowing it from someone else already, right?
Right,
So,
indeed.
um, if it's a dope loop, it's a dope loop. Like,
Mhm.
there's tons of classics that were just straight loops.
Right,
We can't discredit just because they decided not to chop.
right.
I think, what chopping does is it creates different creative paths that you can take with the
Mhm.
sample. And so, if at all possible, I will chop. But sometimes even chopping, you end up doing the same pattern as the loop anyway.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So, all right. So when you're making these beats, do you have a sweet comfort zone with your BPMs?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I typically don't go anything over 85 BPMs.
Right.
My
Indeed.
head, the way my head works
Hmm.
is that anything over 85 sounds dated to me.
Yes.
And like I can't imagine like the artists that I work with rapping over anything over 85 because it'll sound fast.
Right.
And like
Indeed.
the current world we live in
Right.
the world that we're producing for, at least in the underground street stuff, it's slow.
It's slow. Yeah. Yeah.
It's slow.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
I made a beat the other day with 68 BPMs.
That, yeah, exactly. That's very slow because I've just noticed, and I was thinking the day before we got on, like I noticed nowadays the beats are slower, whereas you listen to like Rock and Big Daddy Kane, it's doom 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 doom, which I prefer the slower beats because I like to hear the artist, and I don't want the artist to sound like he's trying to keep up with the beat.
Yeah,
You know, so
100%.
I noticed it's just gotten a lot slower. Also, I've noticed too, right? It's like when it comes to beat making, like, you know, Premiere, how they would take a stab from here, different, and make one body of work, a wall of sound, I'll call it. If you listen to like the older albums from like the late 80s, early 90s, it was a bunch of sounds to make one record. I noticed, have you noticed now is usually just one record, and a lot of times it's a loop?
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. And I think
Mhm.
that comes from, I think a lot of it comes from the digital world that we're living in now.
Right.
Um, it sounds funny, but like it's harder to pull
Mhm.
different sounds digitally than it is to just grab records and sample,
Mm.
right? Like if I know that I'm looking for a horn or if I'm looking for like a specific snare, I know where to go in my record collection. There I
And
can
make it
start.
fit, and actually make it fit that beat.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm.
Whereas nowadays you have access to so many things that maybe it's
Right.
just too complicated.
Right.
I got to
Yeah.
go through and sample 55 different waves, you know, like
Right.
I think it's easier to do that type of work with vinyl than it
Yeah.
would be digitally.
Because I'm noticing nowadays too, there's not a lot of layering um in the beats. And I'm not saying it's wrong, you know, it's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
You know, I noticed not a lot of layering in the beats also. You know, I noticed like and thing that, you know, woke me up, and I hate to shout them out because they are telling on people, but who sampled dot
Oh yeah.
com. They're spilling the beans, but in a way it's like, oh wow, that's all he did. And if you don't know the record, you thinking he played every little element, he put every little element into that beat, and that's not the case. A lot of
Yeah.
times it was just a loop, or it was two sections of the record they took and they put it together, you know. So has your process of making beats changed over the years, or is it still the same way?
It's definitely changed. I think from the SP 1200,
Mm.
the next machine I had after the 1200 was a 2000 XL.
Okay.
And I did not know about like the slicing feature in the 2000 XL.
Mm.
Like there wasn't anyone around me that taught me how to use the SP or taught me how to use the MPC because this was before the internet. Like
Right.
this was before, you know, YouTube and shit where you could just
Or
dial
is-
in and figure out
right.
what's going on. So I would just do bits and pieces at a time.
Oh, pulling the record back.
Yeah. And I would
Right.
just chop that way. And because
Hmm.
that's the way that I, you know, and
Right.
throughout the years, the machines have made it easier to chop things, right? So
Right.
it's a lot, so it's quicker to sample 10 seconds than it is to sample 3 seconds, 3 seconds, three
Right.
seconds, three
Absolutely.
seconds. Um, but like on a machine like a 4000, you can do auto slicing.
Right.
Um, but that was the first time I ever really even saw something like that. So to answer your question in a long way, I definitely do things different now just because it's so much easier to chop. So instead of going bit by bit by bit, I will sample a longer piece and then chop that.
Gotcha. Yeah, true indeed. Another thing I've noticed too, um, a lot of those choppy type of beats are not as popular as they used to be. You know, I notice a lot of times it's those looped, slowed down, looped beats, and it could be like an irregular loop, or it could be, you know, just a basic loop, but it's, you know, it's slowed down. It's like I think Rock Marciano pioneered that, taking things that weren't even supposed to be looped and looping it, and it's like left brain you know,
Yeah.
nowadays, and I notice those type of beats are what's really popular, that the DJ Premier style is not as prevalent as it used to be. It's
Yeah.
real choppy and all of that.
I think, like Primo is he's the man who's, like really created that world,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And I think anyone that like chops like that will immediately get compared to. So I think people stepped away from that. But if you look at people like
Hmm.
Alchemist,
Right.
he chops the shit out of records, and it sounds like one song. Like it sounds one song the way he
Right.
does things. So I think the chopping has just evolved.
Mm.
So whereas there might be looping, there may be chops going on too that you just don't
Because it's so
you don't you just
seamless.
don't see because it's so seamless. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's just so seamless. All right, so let's talk about drums. Like, are you still getting all your drums off vinyl? Is that like a must?
I don't it
Hmm.
I've been collecting drums since 95.
Right.
I still have all my drums that I started back way back then.
Hmm.
And I still find drums today.
Hmm.
Like I'll buy a record and I'll find a snare and I'll still sample that snare. So
Right.
I mean I'll take drums from anywhere.
So how do you keep your drums from being repetitive? See, I'm not a drummer. That finger drumming is kind of that the boom boom the doom. That's why I like drum breaks and
Yep.
chopping them up and making them swing. They hit a little bit better. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I
Well, because
mean,
there's a human behind it, right?
right.
So like you're sampling like
Hmm.
an actual human that had emotion and
Right.
their own personal rhythm, right? There was clicking in the background. Well, maybe there was, but
Right.
you don't know that. We don't know that, and it just feels more natural.
Hmm.
I think the key to breaks, and I use breaks almost every beat.
Right.
The key to breaks is just layering drums with them.
Mm.
That
So
way,
fitting them in
you can
between the
keep the
space.
rhythm.
And you're
Do
saying
what?
fitting, so you're fitting another the separate. All right, so you have like a drum break, right? So what you're
Yeah,
saying is you find a snare and a kick to go in between those that rhythm already.
yeah. So
Okay.
what I will do, and this is layering more than
Hmm.
anything. The cool thing about you can do this on the 3000, you can do it all the way to now. I'm sure you can do it on the 2000 XL. I didn't
Right.
learn about this till way later.
Right.
You can like let's say you have a break and you chop it up into 8 pieces.
Right.
So kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, snare, right? And you're just playing it and you're
Hmm.
replaying the rhythm that you want.
Right.
You can go through, like I'll go through my library and find a kick that I like, and I'll have the kick and I'll tune it, and I'll have that kick triggered every time I hit the kick on the break.
Mm.
So that adds extra thump to that
Texture. Right.
to that, right? And I'll do the same thing with the snare. And you just continue to do that until you find things, and then I'll go through and I'll add extra hi-hats in the back, try to dirty them up real bad
Right.
so it doesn't sound like it's just like
Right.
normal.
Right.
Um, but I absolutely love breaks. I think breaks are,
Right.
like that's the
Right.
foundation.
Yeah, I do too. Now, are you against just looping up a break
Nah,
without chopping it? Just looping it, because sometimes it just be so dope, like you just don't even mess up the groove.
yeah.
You
If it's
know.
dope, do it. You know,
Yeah,
if it's
yeah,
dope, do it.
yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, so we're gonna go into the business part of beat making, okay? Because what aggravates you the most about the business part of beat making?
I think it's multiple. There's multiple things for me
Hmm.
aggravate, uh, and this is where the work life balance thing kind of comes in.
Right.
Right, I have a day job
Okay.
also.
Right.
It's another passion piece of mine that I absolutely love. I
Hmm.
love the company that I work for,
Right.
um, which allows me to pick and choose what I do. Because my experience with record labels in the past has not been pleasant.
Hmm.
And there's so many roadblocks when it comes to putting out records that way.
Right.
Whereas I work with somebody like the album I just put out with Red Inf
Right.
from Queens. There was no. It was like, hey, let's do a record, and then we just did it. We put it out,
Hmm.
label out of the UK, picked it up for vinyl, and that was it. Like the money came across, the money went. It was just seamless.
Right.
Whereas with a record label, you get tied up in legalities of, like the things you can do, the things you can't do. And I prefer to stay on the indie side where I don't have to do things like that. And I can just pick and choose what I want to do.
Got you. So, is there really money to be made as a sample-based beat maker nowadays? When there's a lot, everybody's doing it now.
I think so. You just have to be cognizant of what you're sampling,
Okay, so you
you
can.
know?
So you say you can be a full-time beat maker and make money and survive with just beat making.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, you look at people like Cook and Soul
Hmm.
like I don't know him, but I would assume that's from the looks of it, that's all he does.
Mm,
And he's doing it.
right.
He's successful.
Right. Because I don't think we'll ever get those days back where we were getting 20,000, 10,000 beat, 15,000 a beat. Well, I mean, what do you think killed that? What happened?
The internet.
I think Premiere at one time was getting like 25 G's for a beat. So it's like
You know,
the internet, like, is it really worth it when you got a bedroom producer who can sell you the same, just a beat just as hot for $50?
that's that's where the internet comes in and kind
Mhm.
of, without sounding like an old man,
Right.
that's kind of where everything started going downhill, and that's
Mhm.
that's for the music in general,
Right.
the music business in general. And
Right.
it's okay to take some of those people down a notch, those
Hmm.
companies,
Right.
but the fact that things are so readily available now,
Hmm.
the records that you sample are readily available, the technology you need to make records with those records is readily available. Like I think what is it, FL Studio was like $99 or something.
Right.
Like you can get busy for
Yeah,
$99.
you certainly can.
Back in the day, you had to.
My first MPC cost me like 1,500. And I had to
Yep,
save for that. You know what I mean? Back
yep.
in
My
'99.
SP 1200 when I was 18 years old, $2,800.
Right. It's a lot of
And like
money.
that money was not easy to come by, and we
It's
won't
not
go into
easy.
how I got it, but
Right.
it's I think it's not that. Don't get me wrong. Like I think it's amazing where we're at technology wise,
Yes.
but I think that is what drove the price down.
Hmm.
Because anytime you have a flooding of a market, you change the
Hmm.
you change the demand, right?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
If you've got somebody that doesn't have the budget to pay $25,000 a beat, and you
Hmm.
got somebody that can do the same type of work for 500, I mean, we know where that's going to go.
Right. And the reason why I ask about being a sample based producer, I'm talking about as far as like strictly just selling, trying to sell beats to artists that are out there actually making records. Now, I know you could be sample based and you can, try to sell beats on BeatStars. You can try to sell sample packs, things like that. But someone who wants to be the next Alchemist, the next Derringer, the next, Big Ghost LTD and things like that, it seems like as a producer to actually just even get heard, you have to give these beats away. Like if I want to work with Flea Lord, he's not going to buy a beat from me. I have to. He doesn't know me. I'd have to give him beats. You know. And
Yep.
I'm like, is there really any money in being a strictly sample based beat maker, just trying to work with the hottest people in the underground?
I think that's a I think that's a tricky question because you
Mhm.
know you have to get noticed by the people that are going to get you in front of people, right?
Right.
And then in order for you to make money, the people that are watching those people
Hmm.
need to have bread in order to buy music from you,
Right.
right? So I think this is where you start seeing hybrid models of music business where like you have producers that are building a brand around imagery, and people are purchasing, t-shirts and hats and all of
Mhm.
these things in order to compensate for the fact that there's not a whole lot of money left in the
Right,
production game.
right, and that's what I'm seeing. Like, well, how do, and then the way these artists will do us as well. They expect things for free. We just get thrown through the mud.
Yeah,
Like an artist can sell verses and things like that, but when it comes to us, it's like everybody can sing, and we're all sampling. So it's not like we're playing. A lot of us are not playing original music.
yeah,
So it's like, are we really doing anything really, really special? That people want to pay us 3,000 for the beat and things like that, like it used to
yeah.
be, or is
Well,
it
I
more
think
so? Oh no, or is it more so you get what artist you like and y'all do the splits?
for me, it's always splits.
Hmm.
For me, I'm working with people that I'm either friends with or I really enjoy who they are and the music that they make.
Right,
Um, I typically don't. I don't go after people that I don't feel like I would vibe with
right,
because the one doesn't sound authentic.
absolutely.
Uh, I look at the record I did with Merce.
Hmm.
I did an EP with Merce about 2 years ago, and none of those were samples. That was all, well, it was all my samples, and I chopped up my own stuff and put it out. But that record has a different feeling just because he and I have a friendship and a
Yeah,
relationship. And we just split everything 50-50. You
right,
know,
right,
if I'm doing as much work as you're doing, that's the way it should be.
absolutely. I agree. And one thing I would like to see, and this is before I let you go, one thing I would like to see is like, for example, you produce a whole record with Murs, right?
Yeah.
When Murs has a show, I think he should have you booked on the show too, so you can at least do a beat set and get paid.
Yeah.
You know, that's what
And
that's
he
what I
does,
would like to see.
in his defense, he does that.
Okay, cool. But I would like to see more MCs do that. Like
Absolutely.
because you think about it, if I'm producing a whole album for this artist and he's getting hot off this and he's touring and making money because we don't get none of that money from shows from him, you know?
Correct.
So it's like, okay, the money is scarce on the production side. Why don't you bring us on tour? Part of the deal is when they book you, I'm included where I have a 20-minute beat set.
Yeah.
Where I'm playing beats that I produce from different artists. And what I would like to see is more beat sets from producers going on tour. And now the producer, like you may have yourself, you may have Derringer, Camouflage Mom, and you're playing all the joints that you produce for other people, and some of those guys are coming out and spitting a verse to it and then leaving. You know what I'm saying? I think that'll be dope. For people to, to support the producer like that. Whereas now
Yeah,
it's the
absolutely.
producers on tour, you know, and they're playing all the different hits. So, I know you did a record with Conway.
Yeah.
you know Conway come out, when he spit his verse to the song, whatever, and you're just playing all the hits that you all the music that you made, and certain artists who's in that city or whatever that's around will come out, what I'm saying, and rhyme or say a
Yeah.
rhyme that people never heard before. I would like to see that.
I am 100% on board with that.
I would
I
love to
think
see that.
I think if you look at the era that you and I grew up in,
Hmm.
the producer was so sought after.
Right,
They were the focal point, like
right,
it was Premier, it was Pete, it was
mhm,
uh, Large Pro, Buck Wild,
right.
Showbiz. All these guys were the focus, and then at some point, maybe the internet, I don't know, but at
Yeah,
some
yeah,
point, the rapper became the focus, and
right,
then I'm a DJ also, so as a DJ and producer, we started taking a back seat because now
right,
there's all these other people that know how to make beats and stuff, and so we're no longer the focus,
right.
and the pendulum just swang the other way, and it swung hard. It
Yeah.
swung real
I
hard.
just, I just think it's only right. If you're getting hot
Exactly.
off the music we did together, you're getting shows, you're doing tours. Bring me along with you. Let me open up and have a beat set.
Yeah.
So I can get some of that money too, because I don't make no money except off the splits off the record. And
Yeah.
the records, the music is not selling like that. You know. But a
Yeah.
lot of these rappers are getting shows and getting show money and don't and here we are Sunday night ironing our shirt to go to work Monday. You know what I'm saying? It's just not fair. It's
Yeah.
not right.
No,
It's not
yeah, and
right.
I agree.
You know?
And people don't see that,
Hmm.
I guess it's a 50-50 thing on this, but people don't see the hours that we spend
Right.
tuning a snare or a kick and finding those records and the time that we've spent digging and like all of that should be, fiscally rewarded.
Indeed.
I completely
Indeed.
understand. I
Indeed.
think I think about, people like DiBiase and a couple of people that have kind of said, you know what, don't worry about the rap. Let's focus on the beats.
Right.
And Beat Flip Club,
Hmm.
and a couple of, different organizations like that focus on just the producer.
Right.
I think the money comes in those type of scenarios where you can get corporate dough
Hmm.
to, help you take things on the road, and as a producer you can make things happen like that. I
Right.
think the real money for producers nowadays is, one is like, how are you providing a service to people that need the help? I was talking to Vanderslice the other day, and we are talking about people asking us on a regular basis to teach them how to sample.
Mm.
Like as a producer, like maybe that's the next route people go.
Could be. Yeah. Could be.
You know, uh, I think there's still, I think there's still money out there to be made. You just have to be creative in the way that you
Yeah.
go after
Definitely
it.
got to be creative. Yeah. Because I've noticed there's different types of producers. So you have the producers that's out there, that's producing for all the hottest dudes in the underground. But then you have the technical producer. So you have the feeling producer who's making the beats through feeling and he's doing all the records and all that. But then you have the technical producer who's doing the beat tutorials online and they're selling the drum kits and the sample packs, things like that. So
Yeah,
I noticed there's different types of producers. Then you have the other producer who's on BeatStars, and whoever can buy the beat, you don't care who it is, which I never really
yeah,
like that because there's certain people I wouldn't want buying my music
and
if I
that's
don't
why I
have
don't have one. That's why I
right,
don't have a BeatStars, because I don't. Like I said earlier, I choose who I work with.
right, you know. So I know you have that type of producer as
Yeah,
well, you know, and then it's just different types, and I'm seeing that there might be some hope somewhere somehow, but I think with the sample laws, I think that also put a dent in things too, as far as simple bass producers. You have to do it for the love, you know.
100%.
Yeah, you have to do it for the love, and if you don't love it, then you because this doesn't seem like you can make a whole lot of. You're not going to get rich
Yeah,
unless you're associated with, I guess, maybe a Griselda or West
yeah,
Side Gun. If that, I don't know, not counting their pockets, but I don't know, you know,
yeah.
you know.
I think
Mhm.
something that I've been completely opposed to for years was, like services like TrackLib.
Mm,
But I saw something. This was like 2-3 days ago, where they have like a yearly, like unlimited sampling
right.
clearance. I can't be mad at that,
Nah, you can't.
because like, I was looking. They've got library records in there. I
Mhm.
dug through there. I was like, there's some stuff in here,
Right.
and you pay a certain amount of money, and then you're good. You don't have to worry about anything.
Mhm. But
I
because
think,
we're not selling music like that or making money,
yeah,
do we even have to worry about if we're sampling out the crates anyway? Unless you're doing a record for someone really big, you
yeah.
know?
If I do stuff like that, in anything that I do that's going to be on a larger scale, I
Mhm.
just sample myself or one of my friends and
Mm.
cut them in on the money.
Gotcha. Cool. Rob Victim, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Man, thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, most definitely, most definitely. This is not your regular interview. This is beat maker to beat maker. So
Yeah, I love it. I
questions are
love
not
it.
generic.
Yeah,
The real
absolutely.
generic question. So this platform is to celebrate us, to give us a platform to, say our piece, speak about our gripes or whatever, and also to allow the audience to put a face to the name. So now they know who Rob Victim is, once they start
Appreciate
seeing
that.
this interview and this platform, you know, starts to grow or whatever. And that's what this all about. I put the beat maker first. You know what I mean? I want the beat maker to be standing next to the artist and be seen and recognized, you know, and things like that. So with that
I
being
love
said,
it, man. I appreciate you.
yeah, I appreciate you too. And keep doing what you're doing. I'm watching, I'm listening. On that note, I'm gonna say peace.
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 I'm gonna tell you now, I ain't no holy individual, but I am righteous. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not gonna steal from you, I'm not gonna cheat you. I'm gonna tell you the truth, whether you like it or not. That's it.
Yeah, on guard. Rock solid, flow fresh with a lot of mileage. Beats come with baggage, the streets is savage. Delete all maggots, keep the heat in the package so delivery is fresh. No grub hub, just slugs to your chest. Too many drugs in your flesh. You failed the test, I inhale.